Today's video needs a little bit of context before really diving in, but it's basically the continuation of a long-standing video series that I started way back when I only covered video games. The series is called Indie Spotlights. I just did another one recently about a game called War Tales, which is fantastic. It was primarily designed to raise awareness for deserving video game projects that maybe don't have an enormous budget or a AAA level marketing spend. The series was a bit hit or miss. I really did enjoy and believe in the games that I covered, but not all of them stuck around. A good example of that would be a game called Lemnis Gate, which is kinda dead now. And that's rather unfortunate because it really was a very special creation. The concept was amazing, it had, at least in my mind, incredible potential, but not every game I covered has gone on to find success. That being said, some of the games I talked about did find widespread success, and one of those games, arguably the pinnacle of sorts for the Indie Spotlight series in its entirety, is Falling Frontier. I've talked about it before, and I'll certainly talk about it again, but the reason for that is very special to me. I was actually the very first creator in the entire world to cover this game and also gather my own footage. I've been meeting with the developer one-on-one for years. We first spoke about the game in 2019, I believe, and since that time, I've watched it grow from something creative to something incredible. Falling Frontier is the best possible example of what the Indie Spotlight series was originally designed to showcase, and today, once again, I'm able to talk about it, this time with exclusive footage, custom assets, and a whole lot more for anyone who might be interested in what I consider to be the most exciting upcoming game release. RTS games have a special place in my heart. Space combat RTS games even more so, and I won't bore everyone with the precise details on why or my childhood and how I played the homeworld demo, not the whole game, just the demo, for 2 hours every weekend during my parentally allowed computer time, but the point is that this game has a special place in my heart. I've seen it grow almost every step of the way, witnessed the creative vision coming to life, and today I get to share that with all of you, which is enormously satisfying and very fun to do. I could say it over and over again, but how about I just show you? This is what the game started as, the first version that I was ever able to play and gather footage for. And here's what it looks like now. The systems have evolved with incredible depth. The combat strategy has been elevated with a wide range of functionalities, and rather than a macro approach where I simply discuss a wider atmosphere, today I want to be hyper-specific and really explain just how deep the game has become with examples. Every ship, as the first example, now has bespoke main battle guns to match the silhouette, and those turrets are part of a broad customization system built on individual platforms. The barrel's attached to the unique base, and the unique base is attached to an internal hitbox. Ships can be customized with unique modules and cannons to specialize in long-range combat, support roles, or what have you. They can have advanced sensors, tracking modules, or missiles. Beyond that, they can have search and rescue capabilities, hangars, repair modules, or mine layers, and each of these systems has its own use case. Let's take a look at how the hitboxes function, for example. This is custom turntable footage provided to me directly of the Hanno Destroyer, which has been stripped down to show only internalized hitboxes. Each turret, obviously, has its own destructible internal base. There is a ballistic armory in the middle of the ship, which can result in some surprise kills, actually, if it gets hit too much or too often by specific ordnance. There are PDC modules that can also be knocked offline, and there's engine components, bridges, and more that all function with interconnected systems that give unbelievable depth to what would otherwise be a somewhat generic RTS combat mechanic. Using the railgun as an example here, there are default penetration values. The standard penetration is modified by ship armor, but loses velocity the further it travels through a ship. 1 is the standard, 0.5 cuts the penetration in half, just as a rough overview, etc., etc. During combat, a ship lined up, let's say bow to stern, can be shredded by railguns, because the ballistic projectile will pass through multiple hitboxes at once as it goes through the ship. By the end, it may even continue on even further into ships behind the original target, as long as there's still velocity to draw from, or penetration to draw from. But correcting for this by only allowing port to starboard type hits will mitigate potential damage far better. Macro and micro are balanced quite well here. With a built-in time slow, the player can situationally control their PDC cannons in a much more effective way. They can determine targeting and control tactical advantages quite well, but the game strikes a unique balance where the system depth is quite obviously huge, while not overwhelming the player completely. You won't be able to control everything in a larger combat encounter with a lot of ships going, but you certainly can exert enormous influence at scale, right down to microing an individual missile volley. Another thing I wanted to mention was that ship drift makes for some pretty cinematic potential movement commands, and certain modules, I don't know how much I can say here, so I'm just going to be vague, certain modules will affect movement, meaning that you won't just be clicking and forgetting about ships if you don't want to. you can actually have them respond with particular maneuvers based on how you move them and when that result in faster, superior turret positioning. Falling Frontier avoids the traditional formula. Mass resources, mass ships win game. That's kind of the standard. Instead of something spammy, for lack of a better word, where you just grab as many of a certain unit comp as you can, then sick them on your enemy, and then win the game, it strives to give higher value to each individual ship. That being said, there are, of course, different combinations that can be taken advantage of, like support ships with long-range sensor capabilities, meshing with larger, more close-range type destroyers, but the balancing here between tactical skill and unit strength is well struck. Heavy ship modification obviously increases per unit cost. I probably don't need to talk about the pursuit of economic balancing here. That's just a given in any game like this. And I hope I'll be partially responsible for providing feedback on those values, so I hope I can do it justice. But the scope of the combat is like night and day compared to what it was a few years ago. Falling Frontier is an example of a game that is truly achieving its creative vision. I've had the pleasure of speaking with Hooded Horse, the publisher supporting the project, and they are an example of a publisher that does it right. And trust me, that's rare for me to say, okay? So when I say those words, you have to know I mean them. They absolutely, unequivocally support the direction of the game, and it may be true that some people on Steam or in YouTube comments are starting to get impatient. I don't really blame you, I know the feeling, but let's remember that a long-standing critique of the modern video game industry is that things are launching buggy and unfinished. Falling Frontier is a break from that trend. It's being built into what it was always intended to be. It will launch as a fully finished, deserving product that stands proudly on 2 feet. And if that takes more time, well, we as players need to remember that if we demand excellence, which we do, it will take time. I'm not even a patient person for the most part myself, but for this I can be patient for. The level of detail involved in this game is baffling. As an example, this turntable right here, I shit you not, has been created with distance-accurate positioning from the planetary bodies that rotate by in the background. Not only that, scale and position for the 3 objects, Titan, Saturn, and the ship itself, has been measured with physically accurate stars. That's the level of detail in play here, just for a custom asset that was given to me personally. I could spend hours discussing the level of detail in the game itself, from ship design with visual assets for planetary re-entry, even though that's entirely unnecessary and they didn't have to do that, but that attention to detail just fleshes out the entire world. All the way to a decal system where damage will leave a patchwork set of burns, scars, and eventual welding marks after repair instead of a pristine hull. But some of it you'll just have to play for yourself when the game launches, because words probably aren't going to do it justice. Falling Frontier is a success story. Over time, the amount of support that the game received has changed dramatically. Todd, the developer, got personal support from individuals. He got support from the game's publisher, of course, Hooded Horse. He got amazing support from the public in the form of reception and positivity, which enabled him to go back to the dream, if you will, which wasn't quite as possible early on with limited resources. Now it is, and now the game is becoming something spectacular. The type of success story I am honored to have been there for, and the kind of game that will become wildly successful as a result. The problem of being forced to pick and choose is basically gone. If it makes the game better, even with a delay, it is happening. It's being added in. The things that were needed to achieve the original vision do fundamentally change certain aspects of the game itself, but the resulting quality is quite obviously worth it. Changing core fundamentals can be considered by some, not in my opinion, but some people do consider it this way, to be a form of deception, but all the support that Falling Frontier has received allows for something special to be crafted that is a true realization of its artistic dream. This is a success story, I've said it before and I'll say it again. Learning over time. It's the first game he's ever made, the developer, and the results here, they speak for themselves. One thing I personally found to be fascinating is that PDCs now use the same logic as first-person shooters, allowing thousands of objects to be fired. The game has become a fluid balance of performance, physics, and creative decisions to enable the most content possible, and believe me, it shows. Financial support allowed the team to include a wildly talented professional artist, which continued to push this past the original highly ambitious concept to a dream reality, where the vision of what the game should be, with big air quotes there, is actually the game we're getting. Art, mechanics, scale, customization, sound, you name it. Now, one thing I wanted to do in this video, in a kind way, of course, is a bit of a call out. I don't normally do things like this, but I wanted to give my perspective on something as someone who's now met with Todd personally one-on-one for years and seen the game evolve during that span of time. This comment right here on Steam, it reads as follows, quote, "The main dev has confidence issues. He could have done an open beta by now at least. Problem is, by the time he's done polishing and polishing and polishing, that Hooded Horse will probably pull their support well before release, and a publisher pulling support can kill a game." End quote. For starters, I can happily tell you that no, Hooded Horse is not going to pull support for this game. It's up around number 30, I think, in terms of wish lists, total wish lists on Steam. It's very much in the public eye, it's highly anticipated, and Hooded Horse they're actually supportive of the idea that the product should be fully finished, which is great. I don't say that often about publishers, okay? Mark my words, that's not a common thing that comes out of my mouth, but this is a good publisher-developer relationship. Second thing, though, is that I see myself in this comment. I don't know how old this guy is, but I see a younger, intensely passionate version of myself in his words, and he says this because he's excited. He likes what he sees, and he wants to play the game. The developer does not have confidence issues, that I can assure you. He just has a well-formed vision, and he's sticking to that vision. I think that when Major Demon Lord plays this game, he will fully understand and appreciate the work that's been done. He probably won't admit it publicly. I wouldn't have either when I was more intensely active in the video game space. But deep down, he will see and respect the game in a way he's probably not fully prepared for. That makes me excited. It does, because we really do often get stories of disappointment. Publishers negatively impacting video games, support being withdrawn. I mean, these are true things. They do happen. Missed expectations on release. That's a common one. But everything I see here and now with the level of access that I've been given, which is not inconsequential, by the way, I know a lot more than I can say publicly in this particular video. I am extremely confident when I tell you that this game is one of the good ones. Sometimes I forget just how cohesive the total vision actually is. Falling Frontier is a world with shades of gray. The historical progress of society that resulted in planetary names being what they are was fully thought through, top to bottom. There is an atmosphere of, I guess, Spartan culture for the digital space age. Mars and Titan are system superpowers. Earth has declined, or is in decline. Titan is a colony seeded by Europa, and Titan is actually the only faction where no one was even born on Earth. They have no strong connection to the original planet, if you will. Factions also have their own ship variants, which is awesome, with practical and decisive reasons why those variations exist. Top to bottom, it's all being considered. What I mean by all this, long-winded, yes, but very necessary, is that the game is actually rising to meet its full potential. And I know that some people will be annoyed or upset by such delays. I fully understand that feeling, but I will happily stake my reputation on this here and now. It is worth it. It's happening for a reason, and the results will be deserving of your patience. For those that want to put it on their wish list, the link is, of course, down below. I could continue talking about this. Today focused a lot on combat and ship mechanics based on a variety of interviews I've done, but some of the things I'm most excited to discuss, at least personally, they're not quite ready yet, so I can't talk about them. It's not the last time I'll talk about this game. I assure you of that. Absolutely not. I might even come out of my streaming retirement of sorts on full release to actually play it live on the channel, but for now, I'll leave you with this. The game started way back when, initially, with no unit collision. Only one type of ballistic projectile, and mostly just stock assets. Now it has entirely redone movement, custom ships, unit collision, multiple ordnance types, dozens of modules and ship customization options, crew, supply chain logistics, military logistics, and the list goes on and on and on. The scale of this world, I'm going off script here, but the scale of this sandbox that you get to play in is enormous, impactful, and it just feels like a worthy space game. A space game where decisions matter, a space game where every single thing you do has impact and strength, everything feels intentional and crafted deliberately instead of haphazard. I mean, it's really one of the most impressive games I've ever seen, and it's even more impressive because it comes from such a small team, and it's actually living up to its creative vision. It wasn't just made and then thrown out there. I mean, it's going to be exactly what it was intended to be, and I just have a great deal of respect for that. What the game was back in the day, early on, seemed cool. What the game has now become is just unequivocally fantastic, and I have no trouble calling it my most anticipated upcoming release, period. That's it though. Links down below to support. I'll cut it there and stop rambling. As always, thank you all for watching. Definitely do check it out if you have any interest in this type of game. Wishlist it, of course, and have a nice night.